will be going over a Gambit. It seems like this seems to be a theme. This is what people keep requesting. Next week, hopefully we will definitely do some sort of normal mainline, mainstream sort of opening. It's only fair. It'll be the last round of the tournament. Danny's going to have to play Darian to see who wins Monday Night Mayhem. So they're both here in the audience tonight. But tonight, we will be going over the Urusov Gambit. And this was requested by Shidiki Yodotomo and Eduardo Bailin. Hopefully I said at least one of those names right. But they've been requesting it week after week, so it's finally time to give them what they've been requesting. So let's get to it here. So this is e4, e5, and now not Darian's worst nightmare, but bishop to c4. So this is the bishop's opening. It's surprisingly even less popular than the King's Gambit, but it's a logical enough move. Obviously, whenever you move this pawn, now our bishop is looking pretty nice on this diagonal. And the main move is what we're looking for tonight, knight to f6. But what's funny is this is also a secret weapon of Michael Kummer. So a lot of the times they play this move just sort of instinctually, as if white had already played knight f3. And this is Mike's secret that I will be releasing to the world. So nobody tell Mike about this episode. He'll be somewhere, he'll be so angry. He figures after this opening, he tricks people into the two knights. So, and he's like, all right, so this is just great for white. And then he can't wait to slam this move. But did you see that move coming, Mike? You see that one coming? So he's somewhere like pulling out his hair, like d3. So that's one possible way to play against it if they play a different move order here, not knight to f6. The other way is to play knight to c3. And you can follow it up with d3 and moves like f4. Try to take advantage of the fact that you haven't played knight to f3 yet. And in a lot of lines, sometimes this knight even goes to e2. But tonight we'll be focused on the main line here after knight to f6. And now white has a surprise in mind. So not the most popular moves, which are d3 and knight to c3, which both protect the pawn, and not even knight to f3, which is a counterattack. Tonight we'll be looking at the move d4, which, okay, can be quite a surprise. It's not a very popular move, so you have the possibility to have them already sort of make a mistake. So which pawn are they going to take? They should probably take something. And the main move is to take on d4. It's not very good to play knight takes e4. It is usually pretty easy for white to get an advantage in several different ways. First of all, we take here on e5, and already we have some tactical tricks based on moves such as queen to d5, which would threaten checkmate and the knight. In certain lines, we can check first, and after the king captures back, play queen d5 and take the knight. So these sort of tactical threats are already in the position. So for example, if we put our knight here, who can find the best move here? What would white play now?
The best move white to play is bishop takes f7.
Excellent. Yeah, bishop takes f7, and then you pick up the knight, you're up a pawn, and the black king has lost the right to castle. So you're doing pretty good. This is much better than queen to d5, which looks pretty good. Like, oh, you're greedy, I want to win the piece. But black has this move. And if you don't capture the knight, he's going to go to e6 and block the f7 pawn. But if we take, black can even play this position, which should be fine for him despite appearances at first. So we have some threats here. We're going to go here. We're going to take this. And this should be just fine for black. So much better was Preston's move order. So very good. All right. So we'll go back here now, and we'll focus on the main line. And again, white's next move might also surprise you. You might be expecting e5, but much more popular is knight to f3. And playing e5 is not so good in this position. Sometimes, like in the Scotch, this is sort of a move that you get to play a lot. But here, after d5, black can get a very nice position after the move bishop to c7. The point is, after we take, if white goes and tries to get back his material, we have this tricky move. Yeah, so if bishop c5, I assume we just take on d5. That's still probably fine. But this also guarantees an advantage, because after you take, we can go here. And in this position, it's black that's way ahead in development. Material is equal, but this isn't any way to get any advantage. So black's actually doing very well in this position, which is why when we go back here, not e5, but knight f3. And so our major focus tonight will be on accepting the gambit. So we'll just put this on the board just for a moment. No, people are shaking their heads, which is a decent reaction. So that is the problem with this too, is that some people see this position and then already they're like, well, that's too much, white has too much. And as we'll see, that is the case. And even in every line, it seems like white does get an advantage. So this is sort of an unbeatable weapon, the Urusov Gambit. Unbeatable. You like it? Oh, he likes it. He likes it. So let's look at not accepting it. And the most common move here is knight to c6. And now we've transposed to the Scotch Gambit, which we've talked about before. So in my Scotch video, Aaron Lynn, we talked about the move e5. The alternative is castling. Oh, Aaron, you left the door open. You know how scary it is out there, Aaron? What? It's a scary world. Aren't you scared? No. Don't you know there's like bad guys out there and creepy crawlies? So we've covered this before. We'll come right back, look at castling in this position. The main line, just to go over it quickly since it's already been covered, is after bishop to b5. We're going over the Urusov Gambit. U-R-U-S-O-V. We'll go back to it in just a minute. Okay, so in this position, we can take now, double the pawns. And so you get this very interesting position where black has the two bishops. Obviously, his pawn structure is a little bit tattered. But all in all, it's a rather equal game. And sometimes in the future, black is hoping to push these guys forward and get a good square for this guy. So a very interesting way to play. Just real briefly, though, we'll talk about the move castling because we haven't talked about that yet on this show. And among the moves that black has available, knight takes is fine. And after rook e1, d5, excellent. Which would be completely crushing for black were it not for this trick. We can take here, and after the queen takes back, hopefully everybody sees it, knight to c3. And so this is just a different way of playing, and the main line continues with knight to g5, castling, and you get your material back. But honestly, I kind of prefer black in this position. The rook doesn't really look entirely healthy over on e6. He might get kicked around, but it should be theoretically equal disposition. So that's another way to play. And so you will probably, if you do have this as part of your repertoire, you do need to sort of have a backup plan for when they play knight to c6, which will happen more often than they'll accept it. So I suppose one more line, and this is sort of the line that I think a lot of Urasaf Gambit players like to pretend doesn't exist. It's not a very popular line, but it's just fine for black. It's very underrated, so let's just show sort of the basics. Here, the main move is to take back. But if you're a big fan of the Danish Gambit or the Goring Gambit, you could castle here, which is pretty suspicious. But after the following moves, I don't know. I think I'd rather be white in a tournament. Now, objectively, black is probably winning here, but that's not so easy to prove when you're sitting down at a tournament and you've never seen this before. So for a certain type of people, this may appeal to them. But the main move is to take. And now there's quite a lot of moves, like every bishop move is a move. We'll go over just one briefly here. So after here, you can consider either e5 or castling. E5 is the more popular. If you castle, and everybody castles, and then you play e5, now d5, and okay, I mean, you get sort of a balanced game. If you try to be a little more direct with the move e5, again, d5, this is sort of the automatic reaction. And now if you take, you get this endgame, where again, you need to make the decision, should I take the queen? Should I take on g7? Should I play queen e2 check?
First the queen and then the pawn.
So which one? You take the queen and then take the pawn?
First the queen and then the pawn.
Okay, and we'll go over this line, which is probably even better than queen e2, though they're so similar for time, we'll just go over one. So this is sort of one of the main positions.
Play bishop h6.
Bishop h6. And yeah, so you get a position like this where obviously your g-pawn is looking pretty good. That's sort of annoying. But there's like a 4-on-2 over on the queen side. So all in all, this should be quite an equal position. So you can choose for yourself if this is sort of the way you want to play. This is a variation that you would need to know. But really, this should be theoretically entirely equal. Okay? So now we're going to jump to our first game here. All right, and this is the game between Nikolay Semenovich Terashchenko, one of your favorite, I'll pronounce like one name right, like all of tonight, versus Georg Ratlui from 1909. And we'll go over 3 games tonight. So let's see what happens when they accept the Gambit. First of all, half of the class shakes their head. But, okay, you still have to prove what you're going to do here as white.
Castle.
You would just castle here. So if you castle, I could play here. I could also play knight to c6. Okay, you might get your pawn back if you want it, and then I'll castle. This also should be a... So here, yeah, you're playing rook e1.
No, after bishop c5.
After bishop c5.
But then rook e1.
With d1. And if here... Suppose I should protect my knight.
Bishop b3.
Okay. And I'm castling. And now you have a substantially different game. So this also is probably a possible line. But in general, people like to immediately go for it. They take on d4. They put the question to the knight. And really, you only have one good retreat square. Knight to f6. And all like the other analysts, they always analyze like all these other bad knight moves that just like lose immediately for some reason. But the obvious choice and almost the only move that's ever been played is knight to f6.
So this is just passive for black. What I was saying earlier, it's more active.
Correct, yeah. White just gets a huge, lead in development, but black is up a pawn. So this is the challenge, can you prove that you can get an attack going with your lead here, or am I just going to be up a pawn? And there are, in general, 3 different plans that black can embark upon in this position. White, it's really easy to play white because the plan is always the same. The plan is you put the knight on c3, you put the bishop on g5, you castle queenside, and you bring your last rook into the center. So you do that basically against anything that black does. Black, on the other hand, can play lines with knight to c6, and then followed up either with d6, or knight to c6 followed by d5. Those are 2 main ideas. And the move c6 followed by d5, which at first looks like it's really slow, but that's actually the critical line in this variation. So you can even postpone developing your pieces in favor of c6 and d5. So first game we're going to look at, we'll cover one of these plans where the knight goes to c6 and the pawn goes to d5. Now in this position, okay, there's actually the most common move here is bishop to g5, which is inaccurate. And we'll go over that at the start of our next game because that's what was played in that game. But to give you the short answer why, it's because if you play bishop to g5, then black can sometimes play knight to c6 followed by d5 and stop you before you have an attack. So you put the knight on c3 so you have control over d5. And in this game, knight to c6. Which at first looks great. You get to attack the queen. Maybe she'll just go back home. But you actually swing over to a really aggressive square, queen to h4. All right, bishop to e7. And as per the plan, bishop to g5. Now we're going to figure out which square the pawn's going to go to. And in this game, he chose the move d5. Now, obviously, this is sometimes a liability. Sometimes we'll be able to take your d-pawn, especially because we're about to get both of our rooks right in the center of the board, and then there's pins everywhere. So I guess what would you guys play here as white?
Long castle.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, if your first instinct is like your bishop is attacked and you need to retreat it, this might not be the opening for you. Because yeah, you need to just play as actively as possible. So you castle queenside. And okay, bishop to e6. Sorry, bishop to e6, which protects the pawn one more time. And now rook to e1. Okay. And probably the best move here for black is the castle. But he made a typical mistake that happens all the time in these lines. The move h6, which threatens nothing. If you take my bishop, then your rook is hanging. So due to the pin, there's really no threat here. And actually, he's already in trouble. But white has to find one really difficult move here if he wants to get a small advantage. So I'll challenge the class. This is a very complicated position. You know, there's pins on the D and E file. Everything can take everything. You know, all sorts of pieces can take all sorts of stuff. So I'll challenge the class, and this one you may want to pause your videos for at home. It's not an easy solution, so best of luck.
Knight takes d5.
The knight takes d5 seems like it's sort of like the most natural move you could play in the position. But actually, I can get away with just taking this knight. And did you have a...
Bishop takes bishop.
Okay. And now I can take back this way.
Bishop takes knight.
Okay. So yeah, you've traded quite a lot of stuff, which is fine for me as black, because I'm trying to not die here.
Okay.
It's not a move that you would first consider. The best move here is bishop takes d5.
I was close.
Which, yeah, you were close. Yeah, something takes d5. And the point is now after knight takes, does anyone want to guess how you'd follow up?
Knight takes.
Knight takes.
No.
So I assume if knight takes, I take here check.
What?
There's check over there.
Yeah, it's check. But actually in this position, you have the more brilliant move. Rook takes d5. And after this capture here, check, there's actually 2 ways to capture that both give you an advantage. Now, knight takes is probably objectively the strongest, even though every other analyst says rook takes. In preparation for this, I studied this position for like an hour last night. Which way is better to take? So it's not the best use of my time, but I do weird things. The threat here, though, you play queen h3 next, and you tend to win some stuff. You know, his queen's going to move away either to e7 or f6, and then you play queen h3. Also, this, I guess I don't have it here, but this also is a very strong continuation. The point is you've prevented black from castling, because if you castle, this would just be a disaster. So both captures are good enough to give white an advantage, but obviously very difficult to see over the board. It's something that, you know, it's a lot easier when you have an engine help you out, because these lines get really complicated really fast. But in the game, he did play this move that was suggested, which is an okay move. It's not bad. So after here, white played queen to h5. And I think black didn't see the threat. That's what you wanted to do? Mm-hmm. And I think black just didn't see the threat. The threat is just to take this bishop. So, and I just think he didn't see it. Because in the game, he took here on c3, which loses very quickly. But the rest of the game is so pretty, it's really funny what happens next, so we'll get to that. However, black has one move to get an advantage here, and this one might even be harder to find than the last puzzle. So what's the only move black can play to secure an advantage here? And the surprising move is king f8. The point is, you're threatening g6 to trap the queen. So that's why if you castled, you wouldn't be able to play g6. But after king f8, white should take this pawn, even though after g6, now the queen is trapped. But now we take the bishop, and when you take, we take your queen. Taking back both ways makes sense, but let's use all of our pieces. And after this capture, if you play rook takes e6, then king f7 will win material. So instead you can take here, black can protect his pawn, and black has emerged with a slightly better position. So, all right, it's an exchange. White has a pawn for the exchange, but all in all, this should be favorable for black. Though you had to find king f8 just to get this, calculate all of that correctly to get a small advantage. But in the game, black simply blundered. And so I've just been thinking all week, did he just not see rook takes e6? I assume he just didn't see it. I assume he didn't calculate that it worked somehow. Because now rook takes e6, and you're in a lot of trouble. But the game is great. So he just played rook takes the stuff. Then he plays rook takes the stuff. The queen moves. Rook takes the stuff. Now you're threatening rook d8 and getting out of the way. And after g6, rook takes the stuff. So rook takes the stuff, rook takes the stuff, rook takes the stuff, rook takes the stuff. And after this capture, well, now it's just over. And I do like that white did play the most accurate mate in this position, so I'm able to show you guys. Otherwise, we just have to throw this game in the garbage. But after the most accurate moves, black gave it up, seeing that this is his only move in this position. So yeah, we can see, and sort of one of the problems was h6 doesn't really threaten anything. But you can kind of get a feeling that no matter what, it's always very difficult to find the absolute best moves in these positions. But in general, it's just a lot easier to play white. And okay, in this game, black just missed a threat, and then the game was over immediately. All right, this next game is Yakov Izayevich Neithatched versus No Name from 1950. So who do you suppose won? Okay, so we get back to this position. So yeah, you were wondering how we got here. In this position, d4. And after the capture, knight to f3. And we're looking at what happens when they accept. And we'll go back to this position here. This is sort of our starting position. And in this game, we'll look at when black develops a plan of knight to c6 and d6 instead of d5, which, okay, also isn't the most active, but we're trying to consolidate, and we don't want d5 to be a liability. So in this game, bishop to g5, which was played first. And also what's kind of interesting about this gambit too is it's so old that there's like a lot of inaccuracies are the main line. And the reason this is inferior to the immediate knight to c3 can be seen in the following variation. After knight to c6, if your queen tries to go to the aggressive square on h4, now d5. And the problem is, we can't castle queenside. We don't have a knight that could take on d5. So we'd be forced either to retreat or to take on f6. And both lines should be fine for black. If bishop d3, we'll come back to bishop takes f6. Then there's like 1,000 really complicated ways that you can get an advantage with black. There's so many complicated ways. You can play like knight b4. You can play bishop b4 followed by queen e7. You can play queen e7 immediately. But even like this simple move, bishop to e7, also just gives black the advantage. Much as this the same way as this does, we castle and we're a pawn up. Perhaps this is a slightly better try. You at least double the pawns, which gives you some hope for compensation here. But this was the move played in Tartakower Schrories from 1905. And you guys have heard of Tartakower, but he lost this game as white. In the game, his opponent just played bishop to e6. But even better to get a larger advantage was queen to e7 to misplace the white king, and then bishop to e6, which black's a pawn up, white has absolutely no compensation. He has negative compensation. Okay, so returning. That's why in this position here, knight to c3 is more popular, at least nowadays. But in this game, his opponent just played bishop to e7, allowing white to get his knight to c3. Okay, so castles, and then white castled. But which way, Aaron? Which way did white castle? Queen side, excellent. And after knight to c6, the queen went all the way over. And in this game, we'll be looking at d6. All right. And it's actually kind of interesting here. So perhaps your first thought is sort of this obvious move. But it does allow one defensive resource for black, namely bishop to f5, which might be, OK, you actually get sort of an unclear position. Whenever you put this rook on e1, you always want to be thinking about taking this bishop. We're going to come back, though, and see a more accurate move than rook e1. But in this position, OK, you can try this. You can take it. And it looks like you can't take back with the queen because of knight d5. But that also might be a playable line. But perhaps better is this. And after some captures, we can move our bishop back. We're getting ready to play knight to f5 if we can trade the queens. We're not going to get checkmated. And so this should be sort of unclear, but obviously white has compensation for the exchange. However, you can prevent that entire idea of bishop to f5 with the move bishop to d3, which was played. And now you're threatening to take on f6 and then take on h7. And in the game, black decided to defend with the move h6, which isn't very good, but neither is g6. If you play g6, this is also good for giving you an idea of how easy it is for white to attack. You play rook to e1, and you're threatening to take the bishop, which happened in the game Haas-Klot from 1997. He didn't find the best move, which is to prevent you from taking the bishop. Instead, he played here, and now the game is over after this move. So the game didn't last very much longer than this. After the recapture, we take on f6. And among other good moves, I mean, knight to d5, threatening c7. He tried to go here. And then he made it even worse on himself in this position. Like, he's already going to lose a lot of stuff. But after h5, white simply went to g5, and black resigned. So now he's facing the threat of the sacrifice on g6. And all in all, it's already over. So, all right. So that's how quickly things can go downhill. Instead, better here is bishop to e6, which prevents me from taking on e7. And then there's two moves, and it's kind of funny. The computers disagree here. Both moves have the same idea of trying to remove the defender here, because if this bishop goes away, then we get to take on e7. The complicated way that Komodo likes starts with bishop to c4. The point being that if your bishop takes on c4, we play rook takes e7, which is, again, very good. And if you play d5, we play bishop takes d5, and that works out in white's favor. But you do have this move. You can try to trade some of the pieces to alleviate the attack. And OK, and then it gives this is Komodo's line. Knight to d4 is a good move. That's kind of a nice move to find. The point is you take my bishop, I take on e7, and my rook is really active. So this should be slightly better for white. And Stockfish instead prefers this other crazy move, g4. The point is you're going to play bishop to f5. The immediate bishop to f5 doesn't work, because after g takes f5, things actually work out for black. But after g4, whatever you play, I play bishop to f5. The point is that if you take, and you should take, I take back with the pawn, and you can't move your bishop, or else I get to take on e7. So this, for example, is the line. And now things are...
why not knight takes e7?
Which position?
No, instead of queen takes bishop, rook.
When a knight takes?
Yes.
OK, I assume I'll go here. My next move might be to go here, depending on what you do.
Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Yep, so queen takes, which gives you the ability to go back and guard some of these dark squares. But now there's so many good moves for me. My rook is going to come to g1, my knight can go to d5, this guy can go to g5, or sometimes you'll sacrifice here. So for example, after rook g1, knight d5, black has to immediately start thinking about giving away some material. But a good example of how quickly this can go downhill is, okay, among other really good moves, there's one I quite like in this position that's surprisingly strong. Knight to d4. The idea is, if you don't take my knight, this is where my knight is going. If you do take my knight, I'm taking with my bishop, and now my queen is going to f6. And if you block this way, then you're going to be annihilated after I remove your bishop, and I get access to h8. So here you'd just be getting mated. So yeah, things really go well in white's favor in these lines. But okay, that's sort of a good move. G4, that's a nice move to find and have.
That's why I don't play e4 anymore.
That's why you don't play e4?
No, I'm not playing e4 anymore.
Okay, so going back to the game, he prevented bishop to f5, and h6 was tried. And in so many games, whenever they're castled and they played h6, the only thing to even think about is taking that pawn. So that's sort of automatic in this position. In the game, he took the bishop, which isn't good. But neither are any tricks based on just moving this knight. So you might be thinking, okay, well, I take, he takes back, but maybe I have some sort of tricky knight move that I could play. We'll try 2 of them. But anywhere that knight goes, well, we can just, we got our pawn back, and we're still attacking you. We have threats on h7. Okay, so something like this. We got our stuff back. Knight h6, and yeah, so I got my stuff back, and your pieces are still misplaced. So okay, we can even just play a simple move, and it's not really easy for you to even develop your pieces, but this should be better for white, as is going to h7. So similarly, we want to put our guy back here, but the knight would take us, so we take the knight, and then we play here. And okay, again, we're just better here. Even in a position like this, it should just be good for white. It's tough. So he must have said, okay, there's no tricks. I'll instead take this pawn. So white happily took here. And in the game, he went here. Okay, it's fair enough. Now, there's a lot of things we could consider. Probably the simplest is knight to g5. We want something to go here. So he took the bishop, which is good because now the bishop won't go to h7, but it's bad because now the rook will go to g3. So he tried this defensive resource, which is a typical defense. And okay, he plopped his bishop back there. And then I assume this move really stunned black, because white has a knockout blow now in this position. So we'll test the audience once again.
Knight takes f7.
Knight takes f7. It's probably good. Yeah, this also is probably very good. I can't, if I take with the king.
Bishop takes, queen takes.
And I'm running away. This also looks quite good.
Yeah, why can't you take with the king?
But.
Rook e1 check. Queen f5.
Just run backwards, forwards.
Yeah, bullying queen.
Okay, now he ignoring that because queen go to b to b5 maybe.
Queen b5 was a bit annoying, but yeah, this, I mean, this has to be good for you too. Yeah, I mean, you can play like you're playing here and here. And, okay. So that's a good move too. But this move just wins on the spot, the move that he played. It's just an instant killer here. Yeah, excellent. Knight e6, which made black resign because either you're letting me, not taking my knight and I checkmate you, or you take this and I'm still checkmating you. Yeah, so knight e6 is just the quick and easy kill, though there's a lot of moves that are winning because white's crushing it here. Okay, but now we'll come on to the most testing plan, the line that's theoretically the most critical. And this was the highest rated game in which this opening was played. This is the game between two people we actually have a chance of having heard of. Boris Avrukh versus Elmira Stripchenko. And this was played in 2001 in Linares. So again, we get our Gambit. And Aaron, you got it all written down? You know the opening?
Yeah.
Were you trying to write it down?
Yeah.
All right, we're doing it one more time. This is your last chance. E4, E5, bishop C4.
Yep.
And after knight to F6, the surprising move D4.
I know.
You know? You got the rest?
And then D4.
And then what does white play?
He takes d4.
Yeah, E takes D4.
Yeah, I wrote it down.
And then what does white play?
I think it's knight F3.
Yeah, I think so too. Knight F3. And then if they take this, what does white play?
D4.
Okay, D4. Okay. Okay, and so black went back. And in this game, we'll see the strongest plan and black's best attempt to equalize this position, which is the move C6 and D5. Okay, so after knight to C3, the best move, C6. And once again, we put all our pieces on just the normal locations. And after D5, what move would we play here as white? So some people see their bishops attacked and want to move, and other people just want to castle.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's no threat here. Hopefully that goes without much explanation. And after bishop to E7, so perhaps now once again we are thinking about taking your bishop, we can get away with the move rook H to E1, which wasn't played, though this is the most popular line, so we'll take a look at it. The point is, of course, since we pinned your bishop, this is no longer an option. So, and they could easily get tricked, especially if this is a blitz game or something. They might just take that. Yeah, you always have to factor in all these pins on the D and E file. In the game, he preferred queen to H4, which also has the benefit of you can't take my bishop. And it avoids some of the problems that I guess white might face if he plays this line. Now the main move here is bishop to E6, and black can go without castling for a while. Our plan is to always prevent you from taking this bishop, which occurs in like every line. And we're just going to put this guy on D7. We got all our pieces out, and then we will be threatening your bishop. So the main line is queen H4. Now you got all your pieces out, and you are threatening our bishop. So bishop to D3, and now knight to C5. So this is the main line. And okay, normally we put our knight here on D4. And then in blitz, we always fool Danny by putting like all of our pieces here, and he can never take them for some reason. And then Danny gets really confused. But even this move is an attempt for black to try to liquidate some of the material. But even in a position like this, if you have to play G6, white is just better. So this is the main line, and white has lots of different plans. He can do this. He can shock everybody by going here with any one of these pieces, actually. And if you take back, all sorts of bad stuff happens. Like we can go here and here, and then really bad stuff happens to you as black. It's quite a crushing move. And obviously, if you don't take, then we're jumping in here and here, and so yeah. So it is hard to be black in these lines, but if this is the best you can do, everybody should be playing this as white, because it's good for white. So perhaps Avrukh had taken a good hard look at these lines, and he decided I'll opt out of that, and I'll play queen to H4, which has a slightly different character to it. His opponent went here, threatening the bishop. And okay, we could again consider here, which has a good chance of becoming, unless this was played. What was played? Oh yes, so this was played. If you play bishop to D3, excuse me, then you can transpose to what we just saw. with the following moves. So this would again be the main line. So he avoided that by leaving his bishop hanging. And okay, his opponent went for it. He took up the challenge. He said, all right, I'll take your bishop. All right, so where is the compensation? Well, these rooks are fantastic. That's about as good as your rooks get. So he decided he'd take here on f6. There's only one serious way you can take back. And now this is kind of good because this is what we'll be doing tomorrow for my strategy class. It'll be maneuvering our pieces, how to improve your pieces. And it seems kind of odd to sacrifice a bishop and then do a really slow maneuver. But that's what he did here. Yeah, the bishop, yeah, he maneuvers all the way to f5. So you gave away a piece, and then you're saying I have the time to reposition my guys in an even better square, which is exactly what happened. Now your bishop is under attack. So the bishop went to c5. All right, so how are we going to continue here with white? And what's funny is when you play white's next move, the computer immediately gets really, really angry. Like, oh, it's like -2, black's just crushing it.
Rook takes knight.
Rook takes knight? What's the point behind this move? I'll take this with something.
No, wait, take it back, please, take it back, please.
Okay. But then when you let the computer think about white's move, eventually it's like, oh, 0, 0, 0, 0. And then you keep putting the moves in the game that were all the top choices. It's like, oh, white's winning. So it's very complicated. The computer it really didn't like that move. It wanted rook e4, which is coming. So at some point, we're going to lift this rook. Sometimes we'll be threatening to take here. Sometimes we'll be able to just swing this guy over. All sorts of threats. But here's a really good square for the queen where you're protecting your knight. And yeah, now your rook is ready to come in, rook e4. All right. And rook e4, as promised. So black has to somehow get counterplay. The move the computer was first afraid of was here. But then it must have not seen this move that white has. White now has a brilliant move based on, so this isn't the game now, this is the computer's line that it first thought was really good for black. And the all-star move that white has now, g3 also is fine. That's the second choice. But you can put your rook on d4. And you want the rook? You want it? If you take it,
Queen takes.
we go here. And that's, how are you going to stop me from mating you? So you can't take, you could try this move, queen to b6. But now we go here and you have lots of issues. We're threatening mate. If you, okay, take here, check, which, okay, that looks pretty scary. You have to allow this as white. Your checks will get you nowhere. You can check me again, but I'll take your bishop. I'll run to g3. Everything's fine. Conversely, if you don't do that, which is the fastest way to stall the mate, if you play a move like rook g8, there's you can just take it. Excellent. Yeah, I mean, I assume rook e8 is also winning, just pinning the rook. But this is the cleanest and the fastest. Now here. Yeah, and then that's curtains. So yeah, fantastic stuff. So even the computer was wrong in its initial assessment. In the game, queen to b6 was played with a threat. And white saw it. What?
On the left side.
On the left side?
Yeah.
What's the threat?
Queen gonna come down and take mate and mate.
Okay, thank goodness we got one of our strongest players here. Yeah, so that is the threat. So b3 was played. All right, so whose attack is going to be faster? And now already there's some temptations here as white.
I know.
Here he played.
He would like to go ahead and sacrifice that queen.
He would. So it's very tempting to take this. It's very tempting. You were not tempted at all? This is tempting. The point is, you take back. Because you see that it's a draw. Is that why? What are you going to do? Okay. But now this move g4. So now I'm threatening rook h6. So you have to see black's defense here. Bishop to f8. But again, you might be thinking, okay, now if I can only put a knight on h4, it would be mate. So I go here. All right, now I have a threat. What are you going to do about that? Queen takes f2, excellent. I guess this is what you saw this from the beginning. You're like, that's why I'm not even tempted. How come you didn't say, oh yeah, queen takes f2, no big deal. The point is, after here, you must take, but you're down 2 pieces, so there's nothing better but to repeat. So yeah, I mean, this is very tempting. That's obviously why you have your queen and rook right where they are, but you had to see, past several defensive moves, and so that would have cost white half a point.
I look for that type of stuff all the time.
Yeah, Preston Smith would have played that 1 second, whether it worked or not. It doesn't always work. But white instead played the strongest move, which is queen takes f7, with lots and lots of threats. But now it's black's turn to make a nice little threat here. We're threatening mate in 2, queen a3, queen b2. So you have to play the right move here with white. So again, I'll let the audience decide. The best move here is rook takes d7. Because it's the last thing Darian would have ever thought about. Okay, so threatening mate. And now I have an escape square, so now I can run away. So he tried this check. Queen a3 also gets you nowhere, because now I can just run away. And, okay, but now what do you do as black?
Why are you taking that rook?
Why isn't he taking this rook?
No, queen takes knight. Queen takes f6.
Queen takes f6. With mate to follow.
Queen takes f5.
Which was played. Okay, and continue the attack. If you find this next move with white, you'll win the game.
Queen takes rook check, and then rook a8.
Yeah, right. So this fails, and then, oh, you came so close. You came so close. Okay, but you have to find just one more move. Polish off your big attack here. Knight g5. Yeah. Rook e8. Threatening 2 different mates with the queen here. And so black resigned. If, let's just say, queen to g6, let's try to understand why we resigned. You take on g8, and you take on f6, which will lead to a big checkmate here. So as you can see, the Urusov Gambit is not at all as suspicious as the King's Gambit that we've been covering with some of those lines. It's actually a very good weapon for white. And although it's unlikely that they'll accept it, because just judging by the audience, everyone was too scared, normally you won't accept that unless you're prepared. But if you're prepared, you'll also know that it's pretty good for white. But it is good just as sort of the backbone of your repertoire. You can have it, you can aim for it, but you should know other lines that also are possible within the bishop's opening.
What is the echo?
All right, well, thanks everybody for coming out. We had a really good class tonight. Pretty exciting line. Hit like, share, subscribe, and thanks everybody for coming out.